We're ready to proceed with the next item on the agenda, which is agenda item number 14, COVID funding, discretionary funding project approval. And if I could ask Mr. Lorimer to lead off on this, please.
Thank you, Provost. Just a brief introduction on this one. I think members are aware that the Council's received quite a wide variety of funding from the Scottish Government for COVID response. That's been a mixture of what I would call general funding to help with the impact on the Council's budget, funding to deliver specific initiatives or projects where the Council is acting as a delivery agent for government, and funding where the Council's been given funding to support local communities impacted by the pandemic. And this report really covers the third type of funding. So it's funding where we've been allocated money to support local communities, but where the use, exactly how we use that money, there's discretion over. So we've identified the needs by liaising with council services and with third sector partners, as set out in the report. So the proposals in Appendix 1 reflect the needs that have been identified so far, where the pandemic has caused new issues or resulted in increased demand for support. And you'll see from the appendix there's quite a wide variety of different things where need has been identified. So we're seeking approval, Provost, for 203,000 of the sums available to be spent. All of that would be funded from additional grant that's been provided to the council. And there would still be reasonably significant sums left to be used as we go through the rest of this financial year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions? Okay, I see Councillor Bell.
Okay, thank you. I support all of these bids. I just find it incredibly distressing that the level of need at Angus Women's Aid is so significant. My question is around the Home Start bid or amount at 10.2. It's a low amount. If it's £750 per family for a crisis support, that's only serving 2 families. I just wondered if you could give me a rationale for that, please. Anyone?
Provost, I'm happy to come back on that one if that's okay. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Bell. Yeah, there's maybe the wording of that appendix that isn't very clear. So this fund is to support families with different vouchers and crisis support. So it's really crisis support grants. It's not 750 per family. It would depend on what the need is. It might be, £20 for fuel or something like that. So the 750 is the scale of what they've needed to use over the last 6 months. So the 1,500 would provide funding for hopefully a year, by which time the group expect to be able to start to fundraise again. So hope that clarifies that one.
It does. It still seems on the low side, but thanks for that clarification.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lorimer. Councillor Bray, you had your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Provost. Yes, on Appendix 1, at the very top, page 254, the Angus Women's Aid, and approval is sought for £142,986 or whatever. Quite a large sum of money, but the amount of good that Angus Women's Aid is doing during this crisis, I'm sure, will fully justify that level. But I would like a wee bit more information if possible. I understand from the description that this is for 2 additional community resource workers posts. These posts are going to be in place for this 142,000.
Mr. Lorimer, can you help Councillor Bray?
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Yes, there's 2 posts for 2 full years, so that's reflected in the scale of the funding. So yeah, it's over a 2-year period. We would expect that funding to last.
Thank you very much for that answer.
Okay. Thank you very much for the raised. Any other comments, questions? Okay, is the report agreed?
Sorry, I had my hand up. I think there's maybe
okay.
a couple of other people do too.
I've got you now. Yeah, okay, go on. Sorry, Chris.
Okay, thanks, Provost. It was with regards to the direct payments and for eligible for free school meals. I just wondered if we were managing to reach out to parent carers, families who homeschool, but who might also be financially challenged, and to those children and families who perhaps aren't attending school for a variety of reasons, or maybe on a part-time table.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Speed. Mr. Lorimer, can you help there?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I don't know the answer to that, but I certainly will find out for Councillor Speed and just confirm that is the position. I can see Mrs. McIntosh has got her hand up, so I think she must know the answer. I'll defer to her.
All right, Mrs. McIntosh.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, Councillor Speed, with regards to children who are absent from school or attending on part-time timetables, all of our schools have kept in really good contact since the very start of the pandemic, not only to offer help with learning and teaching, but with any other help that the whole family might need. And we've done that in conjunction with our social work colleagues and third sector partners. And with regards to families who have chosen to homeschool, and we have had a few of those who have chosen to homeschool or flexi school their children, so homeschool on a part-time basis, they are linked up with one of our additional supports. So they check in every 3 months. And given a change in circumstances for a lot of families, I will be encouraging that conversation to include help for the wider family. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. And I think that's really important if we can capture that within our communications as well, so that, you know, no one feels excluded. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Laurie.
Yes, thank you, Provost. Just a quick comment. I just wanted to say how pleased I am to see that COVID discretionary funding is going to the Moneyfeith befrienders, who have been an absolute blessing to the town over the years. The pandemic has made fundraising a lot harder for them, so this grant will really help them to continue their work, which has never been more important. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Laurie. I've been very supportive of the Moneyfeith defenders what we call it. Right, are there any other comments? Right, is the report agreed? Agreed. Thank you.
Agreed.
And we move on to item 15, guidance to members on distinguishing between strategic and operational. I'd ask Mrs. Buchanan to lead on that.
Thank you, Provost. This report follows on from the training that I've provided in terms of the same subject matter, and it's also in terms of the scrutiny and audit recommendations, as you'll see, in terms of the report itself. There's reference to national guidance, both from the Accounts Commission and also from the Standards Commission. In terms of the former, the later report by the Accounts Commission clarified that in terms of the main themes, these were clear roles and responsibilities and arrangements for governance that were important in terms of councils, as well as effective working relationships with councillors and officers, demonstrating appropriate behaviours, and councillors having the skills and tools to carry out their complex and evolving role. And I've also provided a link to the Standards Commission guidance note, which is advice note for councillors on distinguishing between their strategic role and any operational work. And as members will recall, I went into quite a lot of detail on both these aspects when I provided the training. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Buchanan. Remember, there was a training session on this as well. Have we got any questions for Mrs. Buchanan? Any comments? Is this report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Provost, I've been trying to raise my hand. It doesn't seem to be working at the moment.
Is that Councillor King, is it?
Yes, it's Councillor King, sorry.
Councillor King, sorry, I beg your pardon, and I'll go back and let you speak. Go on.
Thank you. I was trying to get in. It's just I want to make a comment that I made during the training sessions. I think this is a very important part of the training for new councillors, and it should not be optional. It should be mandatory. That you're not allowed to sit as a councillor until you've done this training, because I think it's absolutely critical to how we approach things in life. I won't be needing it because I won't be there, but I think it is essential for any councillors who are joining to find out just exactly where we're going. Now, I've just been asked to try and raise my hand again.
Your hand's not going
And
up.
it doesn't want to do it.
No, it's not. No. Okay, that point is noted. What the point that you've made, and as I say, quite right. We've agreed the report, but your comments are noted, and thank you very much, Councillor King. And we move on to item 16, Lochside Leisure Centre, initial consultation, outcome and next steps. Now, you remember this morning, we agreed that Mr. Mark Guild would come and give his deputation, so he will be able to do that and give his deputation. Councillor Fairweather, I see your hand up. You're muted.
Notice of an amendment, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor McMillan Douglas, you're obviously going to withdraw from this.
I'm just about to withdraw, Provost. I'm just letting you know.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brown as well, I think. Right, let's see, I can't find him. Yes. Okay. I think that we would we'll give a 10-minute recess till.
Could we hear the deputation first, Provost, before
okay,
we
all right, I'll hear the deputation and then we'll have Councillor Fairweather's amendment, then a 10-minute recess to allow people to study it. Okay, and we can hear the deputation. Mr. Guild, you've got 10 minutes, and I'm just reminding councillors that we only speak on this item, things concerning this item, and it's only questions on the item to Mr. Guild. Okay, thank you. Mr. Guild.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Yeah.
Hear you, Mark, but can't see you.
Good, good. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, elected members, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. As you'll know, the Station Park Community Trust withdrew their interest in the leisure centre last night, late on, after a meeting, and I must begin by thanking the Station Park Community Trust for their efforts in leasing Lochside Leisure Centre for community benefit. I know Alistair, Nicola and Paul have all put in many hours, along with my daughter Hannah, of their own time working to provide a facility at Lochside Leisure Centre for the community. It's a great disappointment to see they have not received the support of Angus Council, especially when we see so many other examples. Angus Council helping community groups not to be with Lochside Leisure Centre. The many difficult questions asked of SPCT by Angus Council appear to create more problems than solutions. As we all know, very keen to demolish Lochside Leisure Centre, despite their own survey clearly showing only 35.9% voted for demolition, with the remaining 64.1% voting to retain the building through a sale, lease or community asset transfer. I think it's become obvious, and sadly, we're all wasting our time. The officers of Angus Council want the leisure centre demolished, and I believe we'll never convince them otherwise. They have the resources, they have the powers, and the control of public money to decide whether the leisure centre survives or falls. And from the events surrounding Ingalls Court item earlier today, I'm concerned as elected members you appear powerless, possibly even bullied, and I'm concerned you will be unable to save the leisure centre. Your officers have won. The interest has been withdrawn by Station Park Community Trust. They appear, unfortunately, to be untouchable. Station Park Community Trust appear obstructed in their goal. It's all simply been made too difficult. And your officers simply tell us what they want. And I really must ask, where is the truth in all this? They have told us Lochside Leisure Centre was sinking when it is not. They have told us Angus Council did not have to consult the public when in fact there was a legal requirement to do so. They've spent around 150,000, I think, in legal fees in the court session alone, and there was never any need to do so. All we asked was to consult the public. Was that so difficult? And they tell us Lochside Leisure Centre is costing £1,000 per week in rates, but fail to tell us they receive more back in non-domestic rates from the Scottish Government than they pay. Around 8.5 million more back in the last 8 years than they paid. Lochside Leisure Centre is costing nothing in rates. You as elected members have asked them to carry out an independent external investigation into the leisure centre. You receive an internal investigation from one of their regular service providers. They were entrusted by us all to safeguard a leisure centre, a public asset. And back in February 2017, when the doors closed, the Lochside Leisure Centre was fully functional and in use. On the 7th of September 2018, when we first inspected Lochside Leisure Centre, there was minor deterioration in the building. We estimated 50,000 would make it fully functional and bring it back into community use. Sadly, on the 21st of March, when we last inspected the leisure centre, we found the roof had been damaged, the guards taken off the roof over the fans, water had been allowed to pour in the holes created in the roof, sports hall, the squash court floors, all badly buckled, damaged and beyond saving. We estimate around 200,000 is now required to make it fully functional. That's £200,000 of damage to Lochside Leisure Centre. Ironically, caused not by the leisure centre sinking, but by the neglect of Angus Council to safeguard our public assets. Lochside Leisure Centre, a lost opportunity for the community of Forfar. A result of the actions of Angus Council, a fully functioning building has been lost. All this and nothing happens. The officers can do as they please, they're unaccountable. So where does this leave us? Does the Lochside Leisure Centre now have to be demolished? Not because it's sinking, but because it's been neglected by Angus Council. We may be about to lose a leisure centre because Angus Council have left us with no other option. Angus Council have achieved victory, not in the court of session, but through the back door. Does 427,000 now have to be wasted on the demolition of a leisure centre? Does this really represent best value for the people of Angus? It would be easy for myself also to give up today. But no, that's not an option. I refuse to quit. Indeed, I may be able to help. I have an estimate on my desk from a bona fide demolition contractor for £100,000 for the demolition of Lochside Leisure Centre. I have no idea where they get the number of 427,000. That's for you as elected members to ask. I would ask, rather than spending 427,000 to take Lochside Leisure Centre away from the people of Forfar, I would ask Angus Council to allocate the full 427,000 to the Forfar Common Good Fund, to be ring-fenced for a facility at Lochside to benefit the people of Forfar. And if Angus Council are prepared to ring-fence the 427,000 for the people of Forfar in this way, our company, Guild Homes, is prepared to fund the £100,000 demolition cost. The question I must ask you, do you want to spend 427,000 taking Lochside Leisure Centre from the community, or do you want to give 427,000 to the common good? Do you want to work with the community to do something meaningful and possibly create something special, a community centre, a cafe at Lochside for the people of Forfar, something that will rise up out of the ashes of the leisure centre. I would be delighted to explore these options with Angus Council. I would be delighted to go out and seek sponsorship. And I would be delighted to do anything I can to turn this sorry situation into positive for the people of Forfar and the people of Angus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gould. It's greatly appreciated. Right, have we got any questions for Mr. Guild? Are there any questions for Mr. Guild?
Councillor Darnell and Hans, Provost. Councillor Darnell and Hans, Provost.
There's a hand up which I can't see. Councillor Hans, is it?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Mr. Guild, a previous deputation on this topic, I spoke to you about the situation in my ward, and you told me it was my responsibility as a ward councillor to stand up for my ward, which I'm going to do, and I always do it, and I'm going to do today. In terms of the £427,000 you've just mentioned should go from the general fund, which is all Angus Council money should be put into the Forfar Common Good. How do I square that with my constituents in my ward, where for the last 10 years or so, people have been working tirelessly to get a community centre that the town has had to develop and fund and seek funding for itself, when there's ample additional buildings in Forfar, so much so that for over the last few years, there hasn't been a reasonable lease or offer that's come forward, or indeed a community asset transfer. So how would you explain how I should justify to my constituents the spending of £427,000 for common good?
I think the 400 is already allocated for demolition. I think the decision for the councillors is, do you use it for demolition, or can you use it from the community for something else? I fully sympathise with your situation. I think we're all in the same world where there's not enough money to go around. But this money that we're speaking about is in the general fund, and it is for the demolition of the leisure centre. If I can demolish the leisure centre and take that away from the council and do it for a much lower, it's maybe a win-win situation all round.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gills. Thank you, Councillor Hans. Councillor Dunno? Councillor Dunno?
Okay, I'm here. I'm just trying to get on. Am I unmuted? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thanks for your presentation, Mr. Gild. In your expert opinion on house building, how much would it cost to convert the leisure centre into affordable housing?
The leisure centre, unfortunately, Councillor Durno's not that type of building. It wouldn't work in any way at all, just because of the windows you would have to create and so many things. So it's a totally different type of building. But
so that wouldn't be feasible. That wouldn't be feasible. Okay, just an idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Other questions for Mr. Guild? Right, if there are no further questions, Mr. Guild, once again, thank you very much for your presentation there. It's greatly appreciated by us all. You could leave now, and we will hear. We will now progress with the item.
I think, Provost, the deputation can remain for this particular item. The deputation can remain in the meeting for this item.
Yeah. You can remain if you want, Mr. Guild. It's up to you for this item, if you so choose. Right. Councillor Fairbrother.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I do. Right, I do have an amendment to this particular item. Can the clerk send that out to all members, please?
Yes, Provost. That's being done right now.
That's being done.
Okay, perhaps Provost, right, if they can get maybe 5 minutes to go through it, it's fairly straightforward.
I was actually talking about a 10-minute.
Okay, that's fine, Provost.
Just to give people a chance to see it. Councillor Whiteside, you've got your hand up. Do you just want to make a point before we do a 10-minute recess?
I'm just wondering whether it'd be useful to get a reaction from the legal team or the finance team to Mr. Gill's proposals, so that we can also discuss that while we're looking at the amendment.
Right. Mrs. Buchanan.
Thank you, Councillor Whiteside. I don't think I'd be in a position at this stage to consider what Mr. Gills has said, because I don't have any detail on it other than his narrative. So I think certainly if that were to be done, I'd need a lot more notice and consideration, and also to be able to collaborate with Mr. Lorimer in terms of the detail. Okay, appreciate that. I just wondered if there might be a quick answer on the point that the Councillor Hans raised regarding the common good, the general fund going into one particular common goods. But I appreciate your position. I wasn't clear that was the specifics that you wanted to have a response on. Clarify what your question is specifically, Councillor Whiteside. That would be really helpful, and I can see if I can consult with Mr. Lorimer. I'm not saying that we would have a response straight away, but now that I know the detail of it, that's helpful. So if you could just clarify, you want me to check if the funding that's in the general fund, if that can be transferred over to the common good fund for the purposes of a facility for forfeit. Yeah, that would be greatly helpful, because if it's not legal to do that, then it's a different discussion altogether. Okay, I'll catch Mr. Lorimer. Thank you.
Okay. Right, colleagues. As I said, 10 minutes. It's 14:07. So if we could resume at 14:17. so she could take full control of the amendment. Before we move on, I'd like to invite Mr. Cochrane to speak regarding what the deputy to Mr. Gill. Mr. Cochrane.
Thank you, Provost, and Mr. Gould's deputation. Thank you for that. I do think it's necessary to respond to some of the points that he made, but I don't intend to get into a ping pong or a tit for tat response. I was contacted late yesterday afternoon by Station Park Community Trust when they looked to withdraw their interest in the leisure centre, and they stated at that time that they were a young organisation, that the size of the project and the number of the volunteers that they had were the reasons they were withdrawing. I would note that when we met with Station Park Community Trust, we met with the community planning team, and we offered the support of the community planning team to develop their proposals as we do with other similar projects. So I think those are the points I'd like to respond to. As I say, some of the others I will defer from responding. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Lorimer, will you wish to make some comments as well?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. It was just to come back on the query that Councillor Whiteside had raised just before the council went into recess there. So it would be legally permissible for the council to move the money from the general fund to the common good, providing we were convinced that provided best value. Now, I think it's difficult to make that judgment at this point in time. In fact, I think it's not possible to make that judgment at this point in time until the council has determined what the future of Lochside Leisure Centre is to be. Because the money was set aside for one purpose at one point in time, is not, that doesn't determine what then happens with that money in the future. The decision on how that money should be spent or used is a fresh decision. And until the council determines what is to happen with the leisure centre, I don't think you can make a determination as to what future use that money should be put to. If we think about the policy that was agreed, the common good policy that was agreed by council, we did say within that where the responsibility for dilapidation costs, etc., would fall, but there are flexibilities built into that policy. But the flexibilities can only be applied on best value grounds. And I don't think until the council has made a decision as to what the future of Lochside Leisure Centre is to be, you're in a position to make a best value judgment. So I hope that's helpful in terms of clarifying the question that was raised by Councillor Whiteside, Provost. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lorimer. Just to go back to the recommendations in the motion, you see at 3, it said notes of Station Park Community Trust proposal. Well, that, as we all know, has been withdrawn and is now known as the Forfar Community Football Trust. And they said, as Mr. Gill has said, and others, that late last night they formally withdrew their interest in the leisure centre. To that extent, therefore, the offer to lease submitted by them and is referred to in the council report should now be treated as withdrawn. Councillor Fairweather, you're muted.
I think there are other questions here. Councillor Boyd's got his hand up.
I beg your pardon, Councillor Boyd, you didn't see that. Nor Councillor Brace, and there's Councillor Hands as well. Okay, and Councillor Duff. Sorry, okay, Councillor Boyd, beg your pardon.
Yes, thank you. I had a question back to Mr. Lorimer. It was to do with the kind offer from Mr. Gill about maybe being able to get the thing demolished for the 100,000. Could this be incorporated into Councillor Fader's amendment, i.e. that we would want to have the answers that Ian has just mentioned? This, we need it, or is it, will one of it be the 9th of September, and then after that we could then discuss I personally would like it to be incorporated that whilst this is going on, we could get the answers if it goes to demolition. Then can we have that all by the 9th of September as well? That's my question, and whether, therefore, Councillor Fairweather's willing to add that into his amendment.
Okay, very fair question, Councillor Boyd. Could we then move on to Councillor Brace?
Well, yes, I'm very surprised that Mr. Guild can procure a quote to demolish from a bona fide demolition contractor for a quarter of what the cost that we're projecting it to be. You know, there could be a number of reasons why that quote is so much lower than the one that we have, but I just wondered. Well, I think it's important that that we ask officers for any sort of explanation they can think of for that.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Councillor Brace. That's absolutely right. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I had a couple of comments to make. I think the first one is I note the advice about paying this £427,000 into Forfar Common, but it would need to be approved by the members of the council. And I, for one, as a trustee of Montrose Common Good, would not be supporting that. And I would rather suspect my 3 Montrose ward members would also not be transferring money into the Forfar Common Good Fund. I could point to the coastal erosion at Montrose and much work that needs to be done there to preserve the golf course. And perhaps we could get some money transferred into the Montrose Common Good to do that. I suspect that wouldn't be well received by members in Forfar and Brecon and other places. So I think that politically is a non-starter, whatever the legalities. The second thing I would say is this saga has dragged on for, it seems like, years. It's sapped all our energy and a lot else. I think we need to do a bit of backward scheduling on this one. This building needs to be knocked down in the winter time. Have we got time to have a further delay before we make a decision? What I would hate to find is we decide to knock it down and then we discover the caravan season has opened up again in Forfar and we can't demolish it for another year. So I would like some thought given to that with this delay that Councillor Fairweather is proposing.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Duff. Mr. Cochrane, you wanted to come back, I think, on Councillor Braze's comment.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Councillor Braze. Just to clarify, that our budget is made up from the tender costs that we received back in 2019. We used the Scottish Excel national contract for demolition. We had 14 contractors off that list, not all of which were minded to provide a price. Time from some 340,000 to 580,000 based on the documentation that we issued to them, details of the building, asbestos, etc. So just to give you that comparison on costs. And then in addition to the actual demolition, there are a number of other elements that were used to make up the budget, and that includes things such as the utility disconnections, grass seeding and surveys, bat surveys, etc. And perhaps if I could then segue into Councillor Duff's query, we do have issues around bats and nesting birds, which is a standard one for us, that does imply that we would wish to proceed towards the winter period. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Braze, is that a historic hand? Your hand's still up. Okay, we've got Councillor Cheek.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Yeah, I just concur with actually what Councillor Duff has just said, and also Councillor Hands, I'm afraid. Christie's not lucky enough to have a formal common good fund, although we have funds that come from the Christie Golf Links, which will be maintained for years to come for our community fund. But we don't have a common good fund. I certainly wouldn't be supporting funds just being taken out of the general reserve for all constituents to be put into Forfar's common good fund. There's equal demands all round Angus for council funding, and this just isn't one of them. And secondly, the fact that this has been brought up about the demolition costs. We knew at the outset that £500,000 sounded out of this world as far as demolition costs. The cost to actually basically raise something and turn it into a piece of green land. And then somebody from the private sector comes in saying there's an offer of £100,000. There isn't going to be so much disparity in the amount of work required. Asbestos is a concern. I did hear that from Mr. Cochrane. But that's why I have little faith in Scottish Excel and our policy on tenders and procurement. Councils are seen by the sector as being cash cows and they can sign fat cheques. The private sector doesn't work that way. So it doesn't surprise me at all we could get it for a fraction of the cost that was put in the initial cost for this. So maybe we should be accepting the £100,000 from Mr. Guild just to demolish it and move on.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Cheek. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Provost. My question is actually the other side of Councillor Cheap's point. I mean, I'm concerned about what our internal auditors and Audit Scotland might think of us completely subverting and circumventing the agreed processes for procurement within a local authority. And I would appreciate some feedback from officers on that, please.
Mr. Lorimer.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, the Council's financial regulations provide for how we will take forward procurements. That's not to say that a negotiated position exemptions can be granted. I do think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves though, because the Council has still to make a decision. There was a consultation last year, and the Council is still to make a determination on the outcome of that consultation. So that seems to me to be the area that needs to be determined first. And then the process thereafter determined. But yes, we would, in terms of procurement rules, we would need to, unless we had a clear case for an exemption, and I'm not sure if that would apply here actually, that we would need to go through due process as we would normally do, because we're a public authority using public money, and the opportunity to bid for that work needs to be fair and transparent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Provost. The unintended consequences of pushing this back down the road again, in that my Forfar colleagues are not likely to take a decision on the very much needed public toilets at the Loch until this decision is taken. And we're in danger of losing £35,000 from the Town Regeneration Fund, which we were going to put into these toilets. So I'm certainly very uneasy about kicking the can down the road yet again, when I certainly don't think that there's another community group, trust or anything else coming forward. That's all I can say, but I hope that people will bear in mind that there are other things that are hinged on this.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Devine. Councillor Hands. Councillor Hands.
Yeah. Thank you, Provost. I actually had connection problems, so I didn't actually hear the advice and the answer to Councillor Whiteside's question prior to recess. So I'd appreciate a wee recap on that if that's at all possible. But I would like just to make one comment at the moment. And it strikes me that, the offer of £100,000, if we commit 427,000 to for good, common good, I feel like I'm getting a gun put to my head. Because surely to goodness, if Mr Gould has got that offer, that quote for demolition for £100,000, why don't you just do your civic duty then and share that information with us, with officers, and if it's possible to look at that as a bona fide quote, then let's, for goodness sake, the £400,000 or the £327,000 that's left, it could stay in the general fund. And let's face it, as ward councillors, as Angus councillors, from the agenda we have today, child poverty, COVID recovery, etc., we've all got different things. Surely to goodness that 327,000, if that's what's left, if it's not, then if we can get demolition done cheaper, then fine. What remains from that should be spent in a positive manner. Just kicking this down the road. There's one inevitability that's staring us straight in the face, and I really do not like. I feel like it was almost a threat today that I'll give you £100,000 if you spend it. It's 427,000. That's not democracy either. And as an elected member, I'd really find that quite a difficult thing to be sprung on in a committee meeting.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'll see about your first questions, but I'm quite conscious I'm going to have to leave in a wee minute, and I'd like to get as many people who put their hand up. And Councillor Stewart has been waiting in the lobby for a while.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. It's okay. I don't say then what Councillor Hans just said there. She took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whiteside again.
Thanks, Provost. I think we're actually missing a trick here. Mr Gill's proposal involves demolition, but we can't decide on demolition until we go to consultation. So rather than pushing this down the line, I propose that we start the consultation on demolition, and any offers can be taken into consideration as part of that consultation. I think that's the most sensible way to go from here, and it avoids unnecessary delays. And bear in mind, we've not had a realistic offer in 4 years. So that's what I propose, and I wonder if Councillor Fairweather could amend his amendment to incorporate that idea.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Whiteside. Alison Smith. Is there a hand up? No. Beth Reader. Hand appeared. Right.
I think it's Councillor Davey after this, Provost.
Aye, okay. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. We're at danger of, and I think Mr. Cochrane mentioned it earlier on, we're at danger of sort of putting the cart before the horse here, discussing what is an acceptable use of public money and in relation to the forfeit for common good. I would reiterate though, and this is just in response to a lot of what other councillors are saying, we are currently going to spend £427,000 in forfeit to knock the building down. So it seems strange that if we're happy to do that, why wouldn't we be happy to do that to create a community facility? And I understand the issues, but currently the building has to be knocked down and we have to spend this amount of money. But that's perhaps a discussion for another day. I would oppose Councillor Whiteside's suggestion. We only found out yesterday that the current community group had withdrew their interest. I think the delay in this process is sensible. It allows community groups to come forward who may wish to express an interest. But also, I do think that there's a discussion, because this is the issue that we've had before. Community groups are concerned about the cost of the upkeep of the building, but we only seem willing to give community groups money if they knock the building down. I think there's a discussion to have here, but Councillor Fairweather's amendment, I think, is sensible, is reasonable, and should there be no further options following this, then that can be bridged at that time. But I think a lot of the discussion around it is forgetting the fact that we and all Angus taxpayers will currently be spending £420,000 to knock down a building in forfeit, all Angus Council taxpayers. Surely there must be a better way to spend that money, especially with the new information we've had today from Mr. Guild. So a lot of the discussion that's been on so far, I would not support the money going to forfeit. The money is already going to forfeit to knock a building down, so why not to try and find a better use of something?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Boyd.
Yes, no, I think That was a hand from earlier on. My apologies for that. Sorry.
Okay, beg your pardon. Right, I've got Beth Reader hand up, but I can't see we can hold her.
No problems, no.
No, okay. Right, colleagues, we've discussed this a fair amount. Have we got to move the motion as is, or Councillor Fairweather, do you want to put in an amendment?
Provost, I've already said I've given notice of an amendment, right, and I would like to speak to it.
Yeah, carry on. Your amendment.
First of all, can I just assure Mr. Guild that I would never be bullied by officers, and I'm quite sure that none of the elected members would be either. And nor can I say at any time our officers have been bullies. This, as Councillor Duff has already intimated, and comments from Councillor Devine and Councillor Whiteside. How long has this gone on? Honestly, it's my probably mitigated nightmare. And we're still sitting with a building, we still can't make up our mind. And only last night, when I got through the message that the Station Park Community Trust, now known as the Forfar Community Football Trust, had withdrawn, how disappointed was I. Now, everybody has their own opinions on this, right? Do we knock it down and do something else with it, or do we or do we keep it and somebody takes it over, either as a lease or a cat? Remembering, of course, that on many occasions we've put forward, we've had cats come forward who have all put in proper business plans for sustainability and viability, and that hasn't happened yet. But one last chance, as far as I'm concerned, because there may be a group out there that who does want to to do this and do it properly. So, would I be adverse to saying what Councillor Whiteside said? Let's just move to consultation for demolition. Probably I wouldn't, but let's give somebody the chance to come back and put forward something that's sustainable and viable, that keeps this building open for the good of the people of Forfar. Hence, I've asked for the amendment. The amendment changes changes the report slightly, and that will give somebody or maybe a few people an opportunity to come back and tell us before September and put in a plan that this building could be saved. Remember, this is a building that is surplus to the council. And what have we been doing? We have been, over the last two more years, spending, is it £1,000 a week, or is it £1,000 a month, trying to maintain this this building. And yes, it is deteriorating, but it's surplus to the council's requirements, and still we can't get somebody to come and say they're going to do this. This is a final chance for them. I thought it was rather defeatist of Mr. Guild that is there somebody else out there? Let's kick it down the road just for a short time. But if nobody comes forward with a proper proposal, we can simply in September put it out to consultation, and that consultation would be, in my mind, to demolish. So I'm asking you to support the amendment today.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fairweather. Have you got a second there?
I'll second that, Provost.
Thank you very much. Councillor Whiteside, you've got a hand up.
Yes, can I propose an alternative amendment, please?
What is your alternative amendment?
That to proceed to consultation on demolition now, because we're already wasting time. Councillor Fairweather's amendment includes further spend on making the building watertight. We've waited 4 years and we haven't had a viable offer. and we can't consider any offers of assistance anyway until we go to consultation on demolition. So that's my amendment.
Okay, and a second then?
I'll second that.
Provost, can I just so members are clear prior to any further discussion that we cannot have two amendments. So I think we would say that if Councillor Fairweather, given that he lodged his amendment first, that be taken as the motion.
Yeah.
And Councillor Whiteside's taken as the amendment, just for clarity for members to debate and to vote on, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks, Provost.
Do you want to speak or do you want me?
I think it's a matter for any other members to speak on any of the proposals before we go to the vote, Provost.
I'll let you crack on, guys. Okay.
Provost, members have been asked to go to the vote on this. The motion by Councillor Fairweather, seconded by Councillor Wan, is in terms of what has been verbally intimated and circulated to members. That is that prior to having due regard to the outcome of the informal consultation, to market the property for lease in order to gauge interest, with a report coming back to Council on 9th September to determine which of the 5 options are to be taken forward, with a view to the formal Section 1 of 5 consultation on former Lochside Leisure Centre land and building. And the amendment by Councillor Whiteside, seconded by Councillor Graves, is to proceed to consultation on demolition. Please vote motion or amendment. Provost?
Motion.
Deputy Provost?
Motion.
Councillor Bell?
Amendment.
Councillor Boyd? Councillor Boyd? Councillor Brace?
Amendment.
Councillor Brown?
Yes, sorry, I was trying to get a point of, and since I haven't had that point of clarification, I'm going to go for no vote.
Well, we never saw your hand, White, sorry.
It's up there just now, Provost, has been for the last 5 minutes.
Provost, I'll continue with the vote. Councillor Brown is not at the meeting. Councillor Keith?
Yeah, and no vote.
Councillor Davey?
Motion.
Councillor Devine?
Amendment.
Councillor Duff?
Amendment.
Councillor Darno?
Amendment.
Councillor Fairweather?
Motion.
Councillor Hans?
Amendment.
Councillor King? Councillor King? Councillor Laurie?
Motion.
Councillor Lumgear? Councillor Lumgear?
Come on now. Motion.
Councillor MacDonald?
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren?
Motion.
Councillor Moore?
Motion.
Councillor Miles?
Motion.
Councillor Nicholl?
Motion.
Councillor Salmond?
Motion.
Councillor Speed?
Motion.
Councillor Stewart?
Motion.
Councillor Sturrock?
Motion.
Councillor Wan?
Motion.
And Councillor Whiteside.
Amendment.
Councillor King, I didn't get your vote. If you're at the meeting, could you indicate motion or amendment?
I don't think he's in, Donald.
I think he may have gone to Andrew Welsh's funeral, actually.
Okay.
Promised on that basis, there's 15 votes for the motion and 8 votes for the amendment. The motion is carried.
Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you very much, colleagues. I'm going to have to go to the funeral as well. I hope we didn't get caught speeding. I'll ask the Deputy Provost to take over.
Okay, thank you, Provost. Good afternoon to agenda item number 17, which is report number 219/21, cycling, walking and safer routes update, and 21-22 programme of projects. Now, if I just move my papers, and it's a report by the Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Cothing, or will I just ask members for questions?
Just happy to take questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
Yes,
Scott's
that's
on the
fine.
call.
Thank you very much, both. Okay, questions? Councillor Boyd is question. Councillor Boyd, is that maybe an old hand?
It is, my apologies.
Oh, that's okay, that's all right. Any questions? No. Comment?
Sorry, Deputy Provost.
Yes, Councillor Speed.
Yep, thank you. Sorry, I'm having real difficulties navigating my screen and flicking between the
Okay,
report and my
lot,
notes.
just shout out, that's fine, it's not a problem.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I welcome this report, and I've been really encouraged in some correspondence I've received over the last couple of days. One in particular, one email from a constituent who was praising the council for their focus with regards to active travel and the investment in the infrastructure across Angus. However, what they did highlight was that they feel that much more could be done to raise awareness of the emergency, climate emergency, and they would like to see more encouragement of supporting people to take up active travel. Of course, we all have the liberty to choose how we get around, but they would like to see a bit more encouragement in terms of kind of behaviour change. However, my questions with regards to this report are in relation to the second list, the kind of reserve list, if you like. And if officers could explain a little bit with regards to the funding for Elliott Golf Course, which it states that Sustrans have agreed in principle to carry out a feasibility study, but also an update on the Freecombe and the Marywell routes as well, and that funding, and also what engagement will be done with those who perhaps haven't been successful that have submitted bids to still try and support them.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Speed. Mr. Cochrane or Mr. Scott, would you like to answer that, please?
Thank you, Provost. I'll leave Mr. Scott to come in. He has the detail. Thank you.
I'm glad I've been promoted to Provost, Mr. Cochrane. That was very good.
Thank you, Mr. Cochrane, and through you, Deputy Provost. In terms of the questions, we're in discussions with Sustrans, which includes discussions this very day on what we can do about the Elliott links path and the issues there. So I'm hoping in that regard to have some good news on that in the near future, to see what we can get fixed during the summer period ahead of the wetter winter where we suffered and the path was impassable. And that is National Cycle Network Route 1. And as the name suggests, and quite clearly it's in Angus, so it's the most important one of those routes. So I'm hoping for good news on that in the near future. In terms of the Freecombe, the Arbroath to Freecombe, was the Arbroath to Freecombe or the Arbroath to Marywell, just to confirm, Councillor Speed?
I think it was both. I'd picked up on both as I noticed they were both in the
Okay,
short
in
list.
terms of the Arbroath to Freecombe, that is subject to an expression of interest for Sustrans Places for Everyone funding. So it replicates the approach that we took in successfully achieving the money for the Arbroath Places for Everyone. There has been a pause, a moratorium from Sustrans. We were notified earlier this week, or maybe the end of last week, by the Director of Sustrans that will be lifted shortly, and they'll be prioritising the applications and their steering group meetings. They'll be prioritising that are close to construction first. They'll then be moving forward to those that are already in the process, and then following on from that, so hopefully later in the summer, they will then get news to us about the success of our expression of interest and ultimately allow us to make an application for that fund. In terms of the Arbroath to Marywell link, we, as per the report 4321, we are going on that at the moment. So that has been funded out of the Regional Active Travel Development Fund, which is administered by TACTRAN. So the study will progress there. Our hope and our intention and our plan in that regard is that the measures that are required there would be subject to a funding bid in next year's rounds of CWSR. And ultimately, in terms of any opportunities as we await next year, so we're just finishing this year's CWSR consultation, we're eagerly awaiting that continued interest next year. But at any stage during the year, if there are opportunities, then we would certainly be keen to seek those out, and particularly where there's opportunities for external funding for our active travel initiatives.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Scott. And Deputy Provost, it was just, I mean, from what I'm hearing, it does sound like that there are huge knock-on benefits to Angus's success with the Arbroath Places for Everyone project, and this is opening up opportunities with extending our further active travel opportunities and infrastructure. Just, I'm sorry, Mr. Scott, though I probably said a lot and asked a few things there, but just with regards to those that have not been successful and have not made those lists, is there things we can do to still keep that engagement and encouragement with regards to their desires to see increased active travel?
Absolutely. In terms of what we've presented in Appendix 3, Councillor Speed is very much those higher profile ones, the ones that we feel are just below the line. We do have a longer list of ideas. They don't end up on the cutting room floor. They do stay within that longer list that the officers have to hand. And if through circumstances, as I say, there's opportunities to enhance those or go back to people, then we will certainly do that.
That's great. Thanks for that reassurance.
Okay, Councillor Speed.
Yep, thanks.
Councillor Bell, a question?
Yes, thank you. I totally support the report, and I'm obviously very delighted to see the commentary on there and the path to Kinnordy as a proposed one. I think there's a lot of appetite in this active travel, and the community groups are working really well on that. I just wondered if you have anything in the mix anywhere further down the line around sort of linking up routes between, for example, Perth and Kinross or the Mearns to improve cross-boundary accessibility as well, particularly in relation to cycling and cycling tourism, because that's gaining momentum as well. Thanks.
Through you, Deputy Provost, in that regard, yes, there are lots of things in some of that shorter or longer term, as can be seen in terms of the Sidlow Path Network bid that we have there. It's one of our pipeline projects. We continue with our fingers crossed for funding applications coming up on that. That demonstrates that cross-border linkage, certainly into with Dundee City. And similarly, in terms of some of our other projects that are ongoing in the pipeline, we have the cross-border Dundee City to Angus from the Broughty Ferry to Montefieth project there. One of the areas that we've started to identify and think about this pipeline and really start to look at not only the links within our borough towns, but also the links between our borough towns, certainly seeking to utilise some of our disused railway tracks. And a lot of those then do cross-border. So we're very, very keen in that regard to ensure that we're lifting the quality of our infrastructure, how that's used, and the behaviour and the health benefits that we get within Angus. But ultimately, we do want the routes to be coming into Angus that people can come and visit us on those active travels. And if they choose to go and visit some of our neighbours, then that would also provide them access to do that.
Okay, Councillor Bell. Okay, thank you. Councillor Laurie, a question?
Just a comment, Deputy Provost. Do you want me to wait?
Yes, we'll go and see, because there's quite a few hands up, Councillor Laurie. I'll come back to you. Councillor Cheap, a question?
Yep, thanks, Deputy Provost. Maybe I could just address it straight to Mr. Scott here, I think. Walter, just for clarity, the recent works at Carnoustie House grounds wasn't on the 2021. Is that effectively going back to 2019-20?
Just to confirm in that regard, the Carnoustie House Path project was originally on the list in 2018-19, I think, or maybe 2019-20. What happened then is that as a result of holding back on that. Other projects came forward. So effectively what happened with that Carnoustie House Path project is it would have been akin right now to something on that Appendix 3. And therefore, when we achieved alternative funding mechanisms, we sought that. And as a result of that, very much a result of the lessons learned on that one, Councillor Cheap, this is why we presented this report to identify where we see those additional projects, and therefore none of these should come as a surprise to members. But ultimately, if we do get alternative funding opportunities, we will communicate those as quickly as we can so that members are aware of how we're progressing with these.
Okay, and can I follow up my second question, Deputy Provost, on this one?
Yes, of course. Of course.
I'm just noting as well that in 21-22 on the proposed list and then the supplementary list, there are 20 projects there, and there's not one of them for Carnoustie in there. Is that because, Walter, that none was brought forward to you? Because I'm just concerned a little bit about the public. You know, we think the public are being made aware of the opportunity to put in bids here, but I always get information back from them saying, well, we never saw this, we never got the opportunity to, and I just don't think we get that word out strongly enough. I know I'm kind of making a comment there, but I'm just concerned that there's 20 projects on here, not one in Carnoustie, and I'm just trying to think, is there anything on a supplementary list that Carnoustie Council should be aware of?
Through you, Deputy Provost, in regards to that, Councillor Cheap, we didn't target anything specifically within Carnoustie. Every borough right across Angus got the same opportunity, and we used the same means to communicate with them. We did get interest and ideas coming through from Carnoustie, but I would have to, and this is an absolutely genuine comment in that regard, there's a lot that's already been done in Carnoustie. I'm not suggesting there isn't a lot more that is needed to be done, but there was certainly the feedback and the thinking when the assessments came in is that the bigger projects are almost already done. So what I would encourage the ward members and also the folk within Carnoustie is to seek out some of those other things. So I think there has been historically quite a lot of focus on picking up things in Carnoustie. It just so happens, and you're absolutely right, I looked through the list for geographical representation and I thought, why is there nothing for Carnoustie? And we did look at that, and that was effectively, that was the summary that we came up with, that we probably delivered quite a lot in Carnoustie. Other boroughs may be catching up, so it's very important that we ensure that the rest of those projects that we start to pick out so that we're seeing those further improvements in Carnoustie and in all the boroughs.
Okay, I'm just coming by quickly. I'm fine with that, Walter. Just the fact I know in the last year or two, I had submitted 2 significant projects for SAFE, which were exactly for safety purposes rather than just nice to have. I'm just surprised they still aren't in the mix here. So I'll maybe write separately to you on that again, because when I read about the path to Carnoustie, no disrespect to that project, but it's a 2.1 kilometre route. And we have suggested, well, I've suggested in the past, 2 routes more than half the size of that, and they're not on this list. So, okay, I'll write separately to you on that one if I may.
Deputy Provost, more than welcome to enter into that correspondence with Councillor Cheap. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Thank you both. Councillor Whiteside, a question? Whiteside. Councillor Whiteside, you're on mute.
Yeah.
That's it. There you go.
That's the team. Sorry about that. Yes, I have obviously been critical in the past of the lack of rural paths in the project, so I'm really delighted to see Wellbank to Kellis in the proposed list, and also the Sidlaw Path network in the potential. I'm just wondering what's the likelihood of that coming to pass, the project on the potential list.
Through you, Deputy Provost, the likelihood is high, I would say, in terms of Sidlaw Path network. It's a project that had built its own momentum, as you're probably aware, Councillor Whiteside, with community councils pushing that forward, doing a lot of work themselves. We really came in on the back of that and slipstreamed them and trying to capture some of the gains they'd already made. It's now moving forward into that more of that delivery phase as to what things will start to happen on the ground. As members know, some of these things are costly, but in terms of the support for this project from a regional perspective, from TACTRAN and the funding there, and certainly from the local consultations that we've undertaken to date, I cannot see that project not maintaining its momentum, and hopefully we'll see delivery of the first phases of that in the very near future.
Oh, that's great news. Thanks for that.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Moore, a question?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Provost. In fact, two questions. First one is on page 319. It's the footpath past for golf course. I could understand a footpath for golf course. I'm just wondering why it's going past.
Through you, Deputy Provost, it is going past because the demand and the intention there was to link to Muirton. There's certainly an economic benefit with providing that path right the way out to that location. So that was the intention for, or that is the intention for that particular bid, Councillor Moore. It was very well received in terms of the assessments, hence it is identified as one of those three immediate supplementary projects should there be any issues with the delivery of the others.
And the map that we've got on page 320, it looks like there's this massive gap right in the middle, Montreatment Forest or the rural area. Now, I'm fairly certain that that's not the case. It's just because we're using dots instead of lines like we have for the path for Kinnordy. Can you just confirm that there are things ongoing in that big gap area?
Easy to confirm, yes, there are, which is why, in terms of the earlier question, we are looking at those linkages. You're quite right in that regard, Councillor Moore, that we're only representing these as dots. And whilst they might look like, on the basis of those dots, there are big gaps, what I would suggest is that those gaps are some of the routes that we'll be looking at. But we've tried to centre those to give a representation as to the spread of the projects, to make sure that we do, as discussed with Councillor Cheap, we do have that geographical representation, so that we're ensuring that all the projects and all the boroughs are getting the an equitable amount of our funding.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Devine, a question?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you.
First of all, I just want to say how Beacon Road, a possibility of getting a crossing there, because it's getting busier and busier. The more the houses at the Mark Guild development, it's getting busier and busier there. So that's great. And I'm extremely happy to see the footpath past Forfar Golf Course. I mean, I had always hoped to get one on the left-hand side, parallel to the road, but it doesn't seem to be possible. So this is an alternative. It's a long way for people walking with buggies and things, but certainly good for cyclists. And it's a tremendous economic advantage, this, and I'm really pleased to see it. So I suppose that it comes under the same kind of assurance that it will happen sooner rather than later, I hope.
So you, Deputy Provost, there's no guarantees in that regard. We've identified the funding, and Appendix 2 does show the list as is current in taking those forward. Again, one of the ideas to identify the three next on the list was either to supplement this year's list if we had any problems, so there's a degree of opportunity there, but also effectively to give us a start point for next year's list. Keen into the CWSR, and we're certainly speaking with Scottish Government and Transport Scotland, who administer this fund, is to see that annual commitment actually being able to roll forward. Because what I would hope in that regard is it allows us then to potentially undertake larger projects over multiple years, rather than having to pick projects that are effectively just deliverable, or that phase is only deliverable within that year.
Okay, Councillor Devine. Thank you. Thank you both. Councillor McMillan Douglas, a question?
A question, Deputy Provost. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In fact, two questions. The first one around the Canody Path. Tremendous to see that given prominence there, and as Walter will know, the Provost has done a massive amount of work over the years on this. In fact, I would recommend that it's called Provost's Path, such as the work that he has put in on it. When should we see completion of Proctor's Path? When should we see completion of Proctor's Path, do you think?
Through you, Deputy Convener. Thanks, Councillor Macmillan-Douglas. Yes, they are very attractive. That's a very attractive proposition, I would say. I don't think we've named many of our active travel paths in the past, so that might be something that we could set a very good precedent. It's not an easy project. It's not a straightforward project in terms of some of the ecological and there's archaeological issues that are coming to the fore there. That said, even with those potential hurdles, and I'll always see those as a benefit, because if there are ecological issues, then there are benefits with having paths linking our ecology, and similarly for our archaeology. So whilst there are potential hurdles for us to overcome, I think the level of support that there's been through the Provost and through other members and the members of the public on that one, that again, I think that's a project that will build this momentum, and therefore we're very, very keen, and it's quite an exciting one for officers to be taken forward. So we would hope to get that done as quickly as possible, but we're also recognising there will be approvals that we'll need to seek for those ecological and the archaeological things. So we intend to progress that as quickly as that allows us to within this year.
Thank you very much. And Deputy Provost, may I follow up with one more question?
Yes, of course.
The Newtile cycle route, which of course does link across borders, or hopefully will link across the Perth and Kinross Angus border. Anything that you would like to, any promises you'd like to hold out there, Mr. Scott? For
always keen to promise, but always be sure to deliver on those promises, Councillor Macmillan-Douglas. As I intimated to Councillor Whiteside, the Sidlow Path network is, as again, it's one of those projects that received a huge amount of support. It has built its own momentum, and as again, that's another project that I and other officers are very excited to deliver, and the sooner we do that, the better.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Not much pressure on you, Mr. Scott. Councillor Brays, a question.
Mine's a comment.
Hans, a question.
Yeah, it is, and it might be that I've missed it, but I don't think so. Quite a number of years ago, I made inquiries about the walking, cycling and safer streets funding for access for Lift Primary School and a safer route. A few months ago, I brought up the subject again, thinking that this was a project that was on a waiting list. One, I didn't see it in the list, and two, is this something that is going to get consideration at some point? Because obviously we're now moving towards encouraging active travel, and access for children walking to Lift Primary School is pretty shocking. So I would certainly like a commitment that that is at least going to be put on the list once and for all and given serious consideration.
Through you, Deputy Provost, what I'm happy to promise to commit to in that regard is to correspond with Councillor Hans just on the detail of that, and if it is possible, we will ensure that it's given due consideration. I am aware that there have been requests historically and in the past for that. I know we haven't done anything physically on the ground there, so it's of no surprise that that is still an issue, so I'd be very happy to enter into particular correspondence with Councillor Hans on that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hans. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Councillor Sturrock, a question?
Yeah, thanks to approved project, Walter. Item 7, the Broomfield Cycle Path, Montrose. You said it's proposed footpath improvements. What exactly is the improvements being done?
Through you, Deputy Provost, as I look through the list to just refresh my memory here. Was that item 7 in terms of the coherent network routes? Would that be
Yeah,
that one?
that's on page 17, appendix 1, yeah.
Yeah. There were a series of issues that were identified, and in a way, historically, I guess we've almost been anticipating perfectly formed projects to be put forward for CWSR, and perhaps in a way, from my response to Councillor Cheap earlier on, where we've dealt with quite a few of the bigger issues or the medium-sized issues. There are a lot of smaller issues, and what we'd identified across many of the borough towns was just how we've got good provision, but it's not necessarily linked. It's not connected. So you might have a good path in one location, a good cycle lane in another location, but you couldn't necessarily get from one point to another. So the intention in terms of the studies and the design for these, and again, it is about preparation for future programs. It's likely to be a lot about better signage in terms of our routes. Some of it might then go into lining, but ultimately, if there are any constrictions and any opportunities to open those up so that we can actually join the dots, and that may be an easy way for me to understand and explain it. These coherent networks is about joining the dots. So we've got a lot of good active travel opportunity within Montrose. We really need to take advantage to provide those links.
Yeah, I thought I'd probably maybe including improvements to the 04 development area land as well, like, you know, the connection through up to Charlton Road. Just one other little query. Are the number of cyclists ever monitored on these cycle routes? The numbers? Because I never see any.
Through you, Deputy Provost, yes. I was actually at a presentation last week by Cycling Scotland, who were demonstrating, and there'll be a new piece of software or a web app where we can actually look and see where the monitors are right across the country and actually view the numbers. There are currently 7 Cycling Scotland monitors within Angus. I did, as a result of that meeting, ask them to tell me where they are, please. And I even found one myself when I was out on my bike in Carnoustie at the weekend. They do monitor the numbers. It is something that is subject to that national monitoring. I would have to observe that the sharing of that data and that information doesn't necessarily get through to us. But now that we have that contact within Cycling Scotland, we will access that information. What I'm also keen to do in terms of the reporting of active travel projects and the pipeline is to start to identify some of that data and information which evidences the fact there are cyclists out there. I often wonder whether fellow cyclists are wearing some kind of cloaking device that renders us invisible, because I see nothing other than cyclists on Angus roads. So it'd be interesting to see what the numbers in terms of those surveys actually tell us in that regard, Councillor Sturrock.
Yeah, that would actually be most helpful, Walter, because it's a good planning tool as well for the development of this system. Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Miles, a question?
Yes, Deputy Provost. Delighted to see the Dromachley loan being included in the approved works. It's just taken me 20 years to get there. But also notice that there's 12,000 allocated in the proposed works. So it's just to get clarification, what is actually the works that are proposed, the footway links, in the bit that's approved? Because to my mind, the first bit should be the bit at the top, connecting the back of the railway line to the Dromachley loan. Is that the first piece that's proposed?
Through you, Deputy Provost, the £12,000 is to deliver on the request from the Community Council and certainly from Councillor Miles and other elected members for us to get proposals together and do something about Dromachley loan. We can't jump to doing that with immediately constructing and changing things. So this is very much about that detailed feasibility study, identify design that we can do, and then seek to put that forward, maybe within that £12,000, but certainly as part of future years projects, that we can start to identify a series of actions that would improve things within Dromachley loan. We are also, and I would point out in terms of discussions that I've had with elected members, the quite clear link between the Dromachley loan area of Brechin and the potential to tap into the Brechin to Montrose link, which is identified in Appendix 3 as one of our very favoured next projects that we would be taking on. So in the short term in that regards, Councillor Miles, it may not be that there will be much physical change, but ultimately what we'll have is a list of actions that can then be costed, funded and delivered.
Well, just to clarify, what was then in the approved works?
Through you, Deputy Convener, there's £12,000 in the under item 2 in Appendix 2, and that is for the proposed feasibility study and the design in preparation for a bid next year. As I say, if there is money available, then that would be put towards those works. But this is very much to ensure that we are identifying the right improvements to make, that we've got them fully costed and designed safely, and therefore they would be ready to go in terms of any funding opportunities either next year through CWSR or through anything else that would come through this year.
You've misunderstood me, Mr. Scott. It's item 9 on the approved works, the 24,000 on new footway links. It was that I was wanting clarification on, please.
Item 9 on the approved
Appendix 1.
Appendix 1, that's works that are completed. Councillor Miles?
Oh, that's already been completed. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sorry for my mistake. I should have realised in that regard. No, we've done works on Dramatically Loan. We're now identifying those, what I would have to say, those bigger issues, which are the ones that have been identified historically.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor King, a question?
Oh. Right, that's me on speaker now. Thank you, Deputy Provost. First of all, my apologies for leaving the meeting for so long. I had to get IT to get me back in. My question is on page 319, Appendix 3. Can Mr. Scott give any update on when we can expect further information on the flooding problems at Elliott? We had a good site visit there. Just wondering if there's any update, because I have a golf course meeting after this tonight.
Through you, Deputy Provost. Apologies for other members if this is repetitious, given the answer I gave to Councillor Speed earlier on, but recognising Councillor King has been away and returned. So in that regard, Councillor King, yes, we've identified and already been in discussions as I informed you when we had our site visit on that lovely Friday morning. We have been in discussions with Sustrans. They have been very, very supportive in terms of taking the works forward. In terms of the urgency for those works, they want us to do the study and the design, but they're very keen that we seek an intervention as soon as is possible. We're all very keen to do that this summer so that we're not experiencing the same difficulties that we had last year during that autumn and winter period where we had the flooding. I can't, in terms of that, I've been in communication with Sustrans today. I'm not necessarily at this stage able to share that with you, but I'm hoping in the next 7 to 10 days to be able to give some substantive news on how we might go about fixing the particular flooding issues down there, reopening the path and making sure that that's then usable for 12 months of the year.
Thank you, Walter. I did come in just as you were finishing with Councillor Speed, and I didn't hear her questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. We'll go to comments now. Councillor Laurie, you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. This report certainly contains some very welcome developments for active travel in the Moneyfeith and Sidlaw ward. I'm pleased to see funding approved for a cycle path at Marine Drive and improvements to the footpath next to the high school. But I'm particularly pleased, as was mentioned earlier, to see proposals for a footpath connecting Wellbank and Kellis. Local residents have been calling for improved connectivity between the villages in the area, so this is very welcome funding indeed. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you very much, Councillor Laurie, and I totally agree with everything that you've said and my other colleagues have said. It's excellent, and how Mr. Scott manages to remember every single little detail and the reasons I do not know, but it was very eloquently presented, Walter, so thank you. Councillor Brays, a comment.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Provost. Yes, I'm very pleased to see a start to works at the top of Dromachley Loan. It's a very difficult area, and it's very off-putting to people wanting to cycle and to walk into the park in Brechin, and so this is very welcome. And what I'm even more pleased about is that we've now got an aspiration that we want to connect all that up onto a new cycleway to Montrose from Brechin. Now, I realise that that's not going to happen tomorrow, but at least that aspiration is there now. And you see, at the moment, it's great to see so many people out cycling and walking, and this is generally for recreation and for their health, and that's to be welcomed, of course it is. But if we really want to make a difference, we have to get more people travelling to their works and therefore cutting down and appointments and all sorts of things, and cutting down car journeys. That's where the real prize is. That's where the real benefit is. So very pleased in all of this. I would say, though, that Brechin only has 2 pedestrian crossings in the whole of the town. And it's a big part of my mailbag, people asking why there isn't a crossing on Montrose Street or further down South West Street. And I can give you an assurance, Mr. Scott, that as a new Angus Council active travel champion, I will be continuing to pester you for such a crossing for as long as I'm a councillor, at least until it's completed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if that's okay, if I can come back. I've managed to flick between my papers and my notes, and it was just to pick up on what I hadn't earlier, but I did have typed out, was with regards to point 8, the proposal for the feasibility study for making a coherent network throughout the town of Arbroath, and linking in with the Places for Everyone A92 project, which I hugely welcome, because often a lot of the comments that I receive from constituents who are interested in the project is around, well, how do we get down there? We want to try it out, but how will this work longer term? So I'm pleased to see that bit of work being done. And also just to kind of let you know about recent experiences I've had along that route during the current street trial. I was really privileged to be able to trial out some e-bikes. So as much as some of my focus on this particular item is with regards to Arbroath, I'm delighted for the opportunities throughout the whole of Angus, because being able to trial out those e-bikes really struck me how possible it could be for us all to connect and cycle around, not just where we stay, but between the towns and villages around about us as well, because the e-bike just made it so effortless. I was able to travel much further, much quicker, but still at the same time still managing to still exercising, still doing some pedaling, but it does mean that you can go further in much quicker time. So I think there's huge opportunity here for the whole of Angus to get really active. One thing I just want to kind of leave, not so much as a question, but just something that I often hear is the existing cycle routes that we do have, kind of older infrastructure in terms of kind of the marked out places on roadsides, often do have cars sitting in them. So I hope that that's something that we can kind of try and tackle a little bit, can encourage people to be conscious of where the park and not park kind of in a cycle lane. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Speed. Yes, I had a few days away up to Aviemore the last couple of days, going up the A9 between the railway line and the road, and then Aviemore itself, up the Cairngorms. It was, and round about here as well, and it was absolutely excellent, and it's quite clear that probably I should as well, but it's good to see people actually doing the amount of active travelling that they're doing. Councillor Boyd, a comment.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. A very good report. I take on board exactly what. Sorry, am I still here? Yeah, are you still hearing me?
Yes.
Sorry, it seemed to pause. It seemed to pause on my one, saying I've got 10% left of my battery for the third time today. So my apologies. I'll start again then, not knowing what I've said. So no, a good report. Yes, on the positive sides. Yes, I think we've got to remember that the community did exceptionally well last year, as the comments that Walter maybe said about half an hour ago. And we now have children moving to our £5 million early learning centre without getting their shoes all dirty at the 150 odd thousand. I think it was about 35% of last year's budgets went. So that was good. But of course, as everyone knows, I will always ask for more. So, and I'm disappointed to see that there is nothing this year, especially after Councillor Cheap has done his two. I'll bring another two forward. Craig Muldoon. It isn't safer. It's dangerous, and I put that request in. It just needs a ton of hardcore. Just while Ian Coughlin's on this, needs a ton of hardcore and pat it down, and we'll have a safe cycle route down Craig Muldoon. And the other one is other photographs that I sent a few months ago, that we are in about a foot either way on the national cycle path along what was the old boardwalk in Carnoustie, where the grass has grown back in. And this is causing nothing but consternation between cyclists who are wanting to go along at 70 miles an hour and dog walkers and toddlers all going along. So this is another one that I'm disappointed to see hasn't appeared in this year. But if there are budgets from anywhere else where these two things can be sorted out, I think I've sent the photos already on both of these. If not, I will. It was quite funny. I was going through my emails last night and I came across the one where it looks like the council had been along once already to cut away how much of the Marmon glass was filling up the cycle path. So look, that's a quick and inexpensive quick fix that would actually be, as we keep on hearing about things for Arbroath, it's always great for Angus. Well, here's something that's great for Angus doing something in Carnoustie. Thank you very much, Walter.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Moore, comment?
Yes, Deputy Provost. Well, I'm delighted that all these schemes have come forward. One of the issues that I've got concerns with is rural pedestrians. It's wonderful to be able to make it safe around the towns for all our pedestrians, but there are those who, especially in COVID, are going out for a walk and they're walking on very narrow grass verges with traffic whipping past them at ridiculous speeds. And, you know, let's look also at rural areas. We've got a cemetery in Dunnican, well, top of Dunnican, and it has, you can get on a core path to Bowery, and then from Bowery you can get to the edge of the village on a tarmac path, and then you've got about 200 yards where you've got to walk on the grass verge. And it's just little things like that where it would make a difference for rural walkers if we looked at issues like that. End of rant.
Okay, Councillor Moore, thank you. I'm sure if you send an email to Mr. Scott, he will take that on board. He's nodding his head, so get your keyboard going. You can multitask during the meeting.
I've already bent it.
Okay, members, we have the recommendations in front of us, and there are 3 of them. Has this report agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item is agenda item number 18, and it's report number 220/21 by the Director of Strategic Policy Transformation and Public Sector Reform, Ms. Smith. That is some title. I have to say it's a mouthful. On the call, so do you want to speak to the report, or shall I just ask members for questions? Whatever suits Ms. Smith and Ms. Hunter.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. I'm happy to give a brief introduction if that's okay, and then
that's absolutely, yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Any detailed questions. So I'm really pleased to bring this report forward again for the temporary operating arrangement changes for Angus Alive. we get the service specification right for the council and the Angus Alive board in terms of the changes as we move up and down levels and new parts of Angus Alive open up again. So the details are there in Appendix 1 around that. We have, over the period, the Chief Executive has had to use delegated powers to shift the licence to occupy from Angus Alive for the Reed-Hall, Arbroath Community Centre and Montrose Town Hall in order to make those available for vaccination centres. And that's a really important thing for us, obviously, as we continue through the COVID response, that people can get vaccinated. Those are 3 key buildings, and that's going really very well. But it does mean that Angus Alive will not be able to take bookings in those premises until 2022, and there will be a resulting loss of income, which we will keep a close monitor on over the next months. Angus Alive have continued to seek external grants, but as furlough reduces, those external grants will reduce as things open up and more staff come back in. So that again is something we're keeping a close eye on. We have asked in the recommendations for the Director of Finance to be given some delegated powers to support Angus Alive, particularly in relation to cash flow as and when required. And just to note that the transformation project has been progressing really, really well. Happy to take any questions on that. I'm sure Kirsty Hunter will be happy to answer any detailed questions as well. But I would hope to bring forward some positive recommendations to Council in respect of the transformation project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms Smith. Any questions from members? Oh, you're getting off lightly today. Any comments? No comments either. Okay, members, we've got the 8 recommendations in front of us then in the report.
Sorry,
Oh.
Councillor Fotheringham, sorry, I lost things there. I do want to ask a question.
Yeah, of course, Councillor Boyd, on you go.
Yeah, my apologies for that. As
No,
usual,
no, that's okay.
I came in with the bit when Vivian was mentioning about the leisure centres and the lack of income. So my question is, why was the Beach Hall not considered for this, where you could have actually kept, because there are various allocated areas within that area. There's the leisure centre to the left, and there's the Beach Hall to the right. So anyone could have come in and used the leisure centre, and we could have gained all that income. And in turn, the old Beach Hall that's there has 4 different doors. You could have come in one door at the back and the other door, and you could have a whole system there, and that would have been a win-win for everyone. So could I ask the question, why was the Beach Hall not considered?
I'm not sure if Kirsty has the detail on that, but my understanding is that it was the halls were needed to be of a substantial size, and the ones identified were for Montrose and Arbroath as a consequence. So the Reed Hall, Montrose Town Hall and Arbroath Community Centre as being the best possible options for those vaccines to be held in.
Well, yeah. Well, to move on again, I know the Beach Hall very well because I've appeared in it many times for over 20 years. It can hold over 300 people with seating areas, and there was 300 plastic seats there. So I'm surprised at that. That comment because the Beach Hall was ideal. It's got 3 or 4 different entrances. It could easily be a one-way system, and I think it's just as big as the one that's in Arbroath. So I just want to highlight my disappointment that yet again You know, there are venues there. I've offered countless times in the 10 years I've been a councillor not to put obstacles in the way, but to actually say, look, we're here at local level to try and help you guys and girls. Sorry, and you know, I'm just dismayed. I genuinely am just dismayed that that the beach hall was stopped, especially when I was asking for this since January.
Okay, my apologies, Councillor Boyd. I do notice that Mr. Armstrong's got his hand up, Deputy Provost. He may have the answer.
Yeah, it's just a clarification for elected members. The vaccination programme is led and coordinated and determined by NHS Tayside. Angus Council supports them in those decisions. So the decisions as to what were the most appropriate venues were ones that were made by NHS Tayside. I think it's important that we're clear on that fact.
I noticed Mr. Balfour had his hand up as well, but I didn't get to him quick enough. Gavin, was that maybe what Mr. Armstrong's just clarified that you were going to do?
Yeah, thank you, Vice Convener. Yes,
No, that's
exactly
okay.
what Mark was going to say.
That's fine.
Yes, but surely you can be asking the questions of them and saying, look, why, you know, on my behalf, because we were discussing this in February, you know, in January, February time. Why not do you go back and say, why is this not considered? This has been going on for over 5 months now. The postcode lottery going on that I mentioned earlier on. I'm sorry, officers are also there to help and support councillors in every locality. Mark, I've sat with you at the start. We talked about 4 localities, you know, that being Montefieth and Carnoust, Montefieth and Carnoust. And the problem we have is every time the council don't do anything about it, other people say it's just like the council didn't do anything to ensure that we have a refuge centre in South Angus. You know,
Councillor Boyd, I think maybe, and I share your frustration, but maybe this is one where Mr. Armstrong, yourself, and maybe Ms. Smith could get together with NHS and have a meeting and thrash all this out. I think
that is the case, Deputy Provost. Thank you very much.
I think so. You know, because I don't think we've got all the answers here today. Is there any other comments? Okay then. We have the 8 recommendations in front of us. Is that report agreed, members?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. I'll just change the papers. And the next one is agenda item number 19. And it's Land Reform Scotland Act 2003, Angus Council Community Golf Links Order 2021. Report by the Interim Director of Communities. This is actually very straightforward, and I don't think Ms. Smith would want to talk on this, although you might. I shall give you the opportunity if you wish. I think it's quite clear though.
No, thank you. I think this one's...
Yeah, any questions from members? Any comments? No, okay, there's 2 recommendations then. Is that report agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 20 is the Montefieth Learning Campus. And my screen would come up. And it's an update to the council by Kelly McIntosh, the Director of Education and Lifelong Learning. Ms. McIntosh, do you wish to say anything, or shall I just go straight to questions?
I'd just like to introduce the paper and notify members of one omission, if that's okay.
Yes, of course. On you go. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm pleased to bring this report on the outcomes of the initial consultation relating to the campus, which took place between January and April of this year. I'd like to advise you that the list of consultees notified on page 4 of Appendix 1, which is page 375 of today's papers, omitted that the community councils for Auchterhouse and for Muirhead, Birkhill and Lith were notified on the 24th of March along with the others in the list. So that's a mistake in the appendix. And just to remind you that Council agreed in December that the priority project for the Learning Estate was the replacement Montefieth High School, and that it's been selected for inclusion as part of the National Learning Estate Investment Programme. and will be eligible for Scottish Government funding. At the heart of this project is the development of enhanced learning and teaching spaces, which will support our delivery of the Curriculum for Excellence. And we are exploring the creative use of space in the new building, engaging closely with those who will use the building in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms McIntosh. Councillor Hans, a question?
Thanks, Deputy Provost. It is a question. Just reflecting on a comment in the equalities, I think it's page 434, and it's looking at the impact on disability, and it's saying, basically there'll be a general benefit for everyone with a disability, and I don't doubt that in terms of for pupils and indeed for staff members as well. However, I do wonder, given the nature of the high school and where the pupils are coming from, surely there has to be consideration in terms of the different impacts on the children with disabilities travelling to and from the school. And I'm thinking more in terms of the social impact, because I can see, with a nice new school and the opportunities for different activities, both within school time and after school. But we're going to have children there that are coming from Sidlaw with disabilities, or coming from households where the parents have a disability and mean transport isn't a possibility. So, although I welcome the fact that there's a wide spread benefit educationally, we do have the social impact to deal with as well. And I know, speaking from personal experience, when my children were at school, we ended up having to go to an independent adjudicator, because and what the independent adjudicator held, and I've said this before as well, is academically Moneyfield High School were meeting all my daughter's needs, but socially there was nothing there. And I just want, in a new school, to make sure we avoid that trap. And we need to make sure that all children are included in terms of accessing in-school activities and also out-of-school activities. And it's not necessarily with a disability. I think it's any of the ASN children that are at the school, we should be looking at mitigating factors so that children can be treated equally.
Councillor Hans, thank you, and I agree. And in relation to activities out with school, it's always been an issue at Moneyfield High School for those young people who travel from the Liff, Birkhill, Ochterhouse, Muirhead area into Moneyfield, because the school transport obviously leaves at a certain time, and so that it did stop them from engaging in extracurricular activity. A few years ago, the school did try to put a scheme in place where they did car sharing with parents and put on minibuses, and it wasn't very successful. I can assure you that as this building is designed, not only will everyone's need be taken into consideration, curriculum will be looked at along with the new building, and I think it's a really important part, although it's not actually what this paper's about. Now is the time to look at our curriculum as we are designing this new building, because the building has to be fit for what we're offering our young people. So I can assure you that we will be taking everybody's needs into consideration. And in relation to those who have to travel far to school, the distance is, there's nothing I can do about the distance from Birkhill, but what I can do is make that journey better for children who have additional support needs. I know that there have been issues quite recently, because some of the children travel on separate transport to their peers because of their needs, and some of the children travel alone. So the impact of that on individual young people will be looked at, and we will try to find solutions that suit everyone.
Can I just come back on that, Deputy Provost?
Of course.
Obviously, you mentioned the previous attempt to get after school activities up and running. I'm well aware of that because I was quite heavily involved with that and have been since I was a councillor, basically. But I think, at the beginning when my children were at school, there used to be taxi funding for individual children. And I think that's maybe where we need to look at it. Again, if it's not taxi funding, it's maybe looking at and matching with volunteers, because it shouldn't be on the basis that our children from the Sidlot area lose out on activities after school because there's no funding or no forethought. And although you're saying this is not the subject of this report, I think it actually is, because at the very beginning, the Quality Impact Assessment kicks in, and this is obviously a difficulty for children in Sidlot and ensuring their access to this school, because basically we're putting £50 million into a brand new school. It shouldn't be all singing, all dancing just for 70% of the pupils. We have a responsibility to make sure we can think out the box and try to maximise children's activities after school as well, because they are just as important as the education offer, which has always been excellent in Moneyfield High. I've not got any complaints about that, but I do actually think the social inclusion is very important as well.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. If I can just clarify, when I said that the curriculum wasn't related to this paper, I meant this paper wasn't about curriculum design, and I fully agree with you. The curriculum is actually the entirety of our offer to young people, and it includes extracurriculum activity, and I think people need to realise that the curriculum is not what we offer in classes. It's actually the entirety of experiences that our young people have and can engage in meaningfully. And that definitely includes activities that some of our schools have before school and at lunchtime and after school. And it's just about the way of being. And I am absolutely in agreement with you that we have to find a way to make sure that all children can engage. And that's related to poverty. So having the right equipment, having the right sports clothing. It's also related to being able to get home after the activities. So please be assured that we will be working on that, and I'd be happy to speak to you with this meeting about any ideas that you have.
Thank you very much, Kelly, and I'm pleased to hear that, and thank you, Councillor Hand, for your questions. Councillor Whiteside, a question?
Yeah, I've got a question and comment, if you don't mind. Do you want me to leave the comment till later?
Yes, please. If we go to the questions first. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, there's quite a lot of positive things to come out of this consultation, which I'm pleased to see, because there was a little bit of worry initially that the plan was perhaps not to replace the existing swimming pool. Now, I'm sure we'd all agree that it would be a completely backward step to build a £50 million school and not include a state-of-the-art swimming pool for use of the school, the surrounding primary schools, and just as importantly, the community. We have an ambition to try and create 20-minute neighbourhoods, and having a facility there that isn't fully used by the community would be a sin, really, as well as other sporting activities. So I just want to ask if there's a real commitment to making the facilities available as much as possible to the wider community. There was also another issue came up now. Sheila's spoken about the travel time for Sidlot pupils, but what some members might not be aware of, that there's a Sidlot community that's actually nearer to Moneyfield, only 8 miles away approximately, the Strathmartin Primary School, who are currently in the Forfar Academy catchment area, which is up to 16 miles away. So just with the building of the new school, I wonder if the team feel it's a good time to have a consultation about catchment areas for this small group of pupils who are even more disadvantaged in many ways.
Thank you. I would have to say that we have not been considering reviewing the catchment areas at this time. But I do recognise that the children who attend Strathmartin Primary School are closer to Moneyfield, and indeed some of them choose to come to Moneyfield High School. I can't remember the first part of your question. Sorry.
Oh, yes, but can I just come back on the Strathmartin issue, just to let you know that there's been quite a lot of parents actually been in touch recently on this subject, because they're aware that there's going to be a new school, and as you know, quite a lot of the potential first years next year and last year did not get a place when they made a place in the Quest. So there is a strength of feeling in the area at the moment.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I can understand elected members will be aware that we capped Moneyfield High School last year and capped it this year to get it back to a capacity that is safe for all the young people. I think it's fair to say that the new build will give it a little bit of extra capacity. That's the plan at the moment. So we project that, unless there's lots of new build housing that we don't know about, we project to be in the position that we were in years before, where Moneyfield had capacity. And in relation to your wider use of the community, for the community, we are absolutely committed to that. And in the design phase, which we're entering now, and since this report was written, I think it's important to say that we've continued to engage with young people and staff. The project team have been in and out of Moneyfield High School as restriction has allowed. And they're looking at the schedule for accommodation and what they would call adjacencies. And I'm hoping that Dave Smith's still on the call in case anybody wants to speak about that. But in layman's terms, I think it believes where things are next to each other and how they can be accessible. And we're definitely looking at separate access for community members for throughout the school day when the school is in, so that it doesn't cause disruption in the school reception area. So I can assure you that all of that is being looked at.
Okay, thank you, Ms McIntosh. And like Councillor Whiteside said, I'm delighted that we're also being asked to approve a new swimming pool and sports block, because it's the current one's well used now. I mean, it's well used by the school, it's well used by the swimming club and class association, which has been going over 40 years. I've chaired it for 20 of these. They haven't this past 15 months, obviously, but they use it 2 nights a week, and there's over 100 young people go to these 6 classes that are on. So it'll be even more well used with a new pool. So thank you. Councillor Laurie, a question.
Just a comment again, Deputy Provost.
Okay. We'll go. Councillor Wan, is yours a question or a comment?
Just a comment.
Okay, we'll go to comments then. Councillor Laurie.
Provost, this is an extremely exciting undertaking for Moneyfield, and I read the consultation responses with great interest. It's clear to me that not only do local people want an optimum learning environment for our young people, but they want a learning campus that benefits the entire community as well. So I'm pleased to see that the recommendations include allowing additional area for out-of-hours non-school activities. I'm also pleased to see recommendations to replace the swimming pool and the sports block, as has been said already, which we can see from the consultation are valued parts of the school building at the moment. So I totally endorse this report, and moving forward I would just encourage residents to engage fully with further consultations. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to shape the heart of our town, so let's get it right.
Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Councillor Wan, a comment?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Provost. I would just like to commend the work of the project team, the submission for the funding and the subsequent work to enable this consultation and associated engagement has all happened when our services are stretched. Since this report was written, the project team have continued to engage with members of the school community, and I look forward to further reports as the project progresses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wan. Councillor Whiteside, a comment?
Thank you. Yeah, I was pleased to see the comments from the primary school pupils and their input, and it was quite interesting that they were focusing on outdoor facilities, and I think that's a reflection of the increased work that primary schools are doing outside, and I think that's great that they're wanting to carry on with that. I also thought it was very positive the talks with Police Scotland. I think that could only be good for the community, having a Moneyfield base and having it in amongst the young people. And finally, I was a little bit perplexed about all the comments about having cleaner toilets. Is there a particular problem in Moneyfield? I'm sure there isn't.
I've never heard that one, but I did read it, I have to say. Thank you, Councillor Whiteside. Councillor Hand, a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Provost. Yeah, again, I would just like to welcome the fact that Moneyfield is finally getting a brand new high school. I have to say, I really do want to commend the pupils for their comments and aspirations. I think the best sentence in a council committee report I've ever read is the recommendation of a petting zoo for Moneyfield High. I think that's a great idea. But in all seriousness, I think I'd also like to comment on what Councillor Whiteside said about the staff area as well, and looking at the boundaries. I seriously actually think that should be given strong consideration, because we have children that go to Strathmartin, and sometimes, certainly in the past, I don't know about now, but it used to be, again, if there was additional support needs recognised in siblings, then it was recommended that their sibling went to Birkhill Primary School. That was certainly the information we got, because it was an enhanced resource school, and the structure might be different, so I might be talking out of date, but I think just keeping siblings together. And we've got in the report as well about, I think it's around about page 385, about encouraging active travel. Whilst it's not possible to encourage active travel from Sidlaw to Moneyfief High, surely to goodness, as we've been talking a lot about sustainability today as well, we really, it would be remiss of us not to take the opportunity now to try and reduce the travel miles for our children, both for them first and foremost, but also for the environment as well. I think the only other thing about this report that I felt was maybe missing, and it was maybe just the wrong report to do that, but I just wondered whether we could have actually had a little bit more in the consultation about trying to get pupils' views on environmental measures that could be taken. This is a brand new school getting built in the mid-2020s. Scotland's going to be, or Glasgow is going to be hosting COP26 at the end in a brand new school that's going to be there for decades to come. I think we could be a bit more inventive and a bit more, just being aware about the fact that we've got opportunities here to try and make this one of Angus's best green schools.
Thank you, Councillor Hand. Ms McIntosh, do you want to come back?
Yeah, and
yes,
again, I agree, it's really exciting being able to build a new school, and there are programme targets for the school that go with us being awarded the funding that are linked to sustainability, obviously. And the report tells you that we've got a group of campus ambassadors, so they are children and young people from the school, and that group will be added to as every primary 7 becomes a first year during the design phase. Some of those first years will join that ambassadors group, and the work looking at green solutions and design will start after the summer. The project team will be working with the children. And I think I'd just like to say the consultation shows that we sent information to all of our primary schools, and 3 of the primary schools did the work with the children. It's just to reiterate that we would normally go out to every school, members of the project team and our central team, and speak to the children, and all of the associated primaries would be involved. And of course we were not able to do that because of the COVID restrictions and not being allowed to have other adults in buildings, but that's not to say that we won't do that if everything is a bit more normal in August. Of the children have their say. So then you'll get a big list with things like chocolate fountains. I like that, like a bit of a chocolate fountain.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly. Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Provost. Just to extend my appreciation of this report and how exciting this is for the people of Moneyfief and surrounding area. Just really looking for some reassurances as you do enter the design phase now of this, that you will obviously continue to engage with those children and families and wider community, but also kind of key partners and stakeholders within, our existing resources in terms of perhaps Disability Sport, Disability Sport Scotland and Disability Sport in Angus, as well as perhaps our health and social care partners who are providing support to those children and families with a disability and additional need, and who are often in the school campus or the extended area themselves as well, or will be.
Yes, and Kelly's nodding, so I'm quite sure that'll all be, that's all noted. Yes, members, I'm also very pleased to see this update report being presented to members today. It's been recognised for some time that Moneyfief High School needs to be replaced, and this is another step forward to that becoming a reality. current building opened, as I happened to be one of the very first year pupils to attend the school starting in August 1979, long before my colleague Councillor Laurie. Don't think he was maybe even around at that time. The very first day of its opening, Rector, as we nicknamed him as pupils, Hector the Rector, he kept a logbook, and I believe a lot of the rectors at that time did. They kept a school logbook, and you know it's not the most attractive building. Hector's first entry in that school logbook, and I've seen it, was 4 words: the opening of Alcatraz. But that school has delivered some exceptional educational results during its time, and I have many happy memories of attending the school. So looking at the recommendations contained within this report today, this is excellent news for the pupils, staff and the wider community, and I look forward to seeing this project progress as we move forward, and I fully support the recommendations in the report. So members, we have the report in front of us. There are 8 recommendations, 9, sorry. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Members, agenda item number 21 is the possible exclusion of the public and press. Do we agree to exclude the public and press?
Agreed.
Okay, then I will ask IT then, but we're just staying here, so I will ask IT, please.